Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. To Chapter 1, A Mysterious Encounter. Laura perched by the window in the castle's grand library, the scent of aged parchment and oak lingering in the air. Outside, the dense Styrian forest stood silent, a living green wall under the summer's soft evening sky. The tranquility of the scene belied the storm of confusion brewing within her. Since Carmilla's arrival, an unsettling fog seemed to permeate the castle's stone walls. "Madame Paradon," Laura whispered, her voice a mere echo amidst the vast rows of books. "Carmilla. She's peculiar, isn't she? The governess, her face a portrait of warmth, paused her knitting. "Child, she is under your father's care, and we must extend our hospitality." "But she shuns the chapel," Laura pressed on, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "And her tales, they're woven with shadows and woe." Before the governess could respond, the measured tread of boots resounded in the corridor. Laura's father entered, his face etched with concern. "Laura, we must speak of Carmilla." In his study, the air was thick with the musk of leather-bound tomes. He motioned for Laura to sit. "The general has grave suspicions about our guest," he confided, his voice barely above a murmur. "The general?" Laura's heart skipped a beat. General Spielsdorf, a longtime friend and ally of her father, had lost his niece under mysterious circumstances. Circumstances now whispered to be entwined with Carmilla. "Yes, he fears she may harbor secrets that led to his niece's untimely demise. We must tread carefully." Laura shivered, recalling Carmilla's gentle touch, her soothing voice that lulled the castle into a sense of false serenity. Her father's gaze was heavy with unspoken fears. "Not all is as it seems, my dear. We must guard against deception." As dusk embraced the castle, Laura lay restless, the moon casting a silver glow across her chamber. Carmilla's enigma haunted her, a specter of charm veiled in mystery. In the ensuing days, Laura observed Carmilla with a cautious eye. She noted how the light seemed to flee from Carmilla's presence, how her nocturnal wanderings left a trail of hushed tones in her wake. One twilight, in the dim drawing room, Carmilla's voice pierced the silence. "Laura, are you a believer in the supernatural?" Laura's heart stuttered, her pulse quickening. I suppose I've never truly considered it," she replied, her voice tremulous. Carmilla leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. "Oh, but it exists, my dear. I've witnessed it firsthand." Her voice was a melody that wove goosebumps along Laura's skin. "Tell me, have you ever felt a presence, something unseen, watching over you?" Laura hesitated, her mind flashing to the shadows that seemed to dance at Carmilla's periphery. I suppose I felt a strange sense of unease at times," she admitted, her eyes darting to the flickering candle on the table between them. "Precisely," Carmilla purred, her voice like velvet. "It is in those moments that the veil between our world and the other thins, when the whispers of the supernatural tickle our senses." Laura's breath caught as she studied Carmilla's face, searching for any hint of deception. "But why do you ask?" A fleeting smile played at Carmilla's lips. "Because, my dear Laura, I sense a kindred spirit in you. One who, like me, is drawn to the mysteries that lurk in the shadows." As the days melted into weeks, Laura found herself increasingly entangled in Carmilla's web. Their conversations delved into the realms of the unknown, the forbidden, and the fantastical. Laura felt a strange sense of liberation in these exchanges, as if she were shedding the confines of her sheltered existence. Yet, with each revelation, a new layer of intrigue shrouded Carmilla, leaving Laura yearning for answers. One moonless night, as Laura lay awake, the distant howl of a wolf echoed through the castle. She sensed a presence in her chamber. The faint scent of lilies tickled her nose, and a soft, familiar voice whispered her name. "Laura, are you awake?" Laura sat up, her heart hammering. In the silvery moonlight, she beheld Carmilla, her dark tresses cascading over her shoulders, her eyes shimmering like black diamonds. "Carmilla, what are you doing here?" A mysterious smile curved Carmilla's lips as she glided closer. "I couldn't sleep, and I sensed the same restlessness in you. So, here I am." Laura's pulse raced as Carmilla sat on the edge of her bed, their knees nearly touching. "But how did you get in?" she asked, her voice laced with wonder and a hint of trepidation. "Oh, my dear, there are many secrets within these castle walls," Carmilla replied, her eyes glittering with mischief, "and I intend to uncover them all." As their gazes held, Laura felt a magnetic pull, as if some invisible force were drawing them closer. In that moment, she knew that whatever secrets Carmilla harbored, she was willing to embrace them, no matter the consequences. In the weeks that followed, Laura and Carmilla's bond deepened. They explored the castle's hidden passages, shared secrets under the light of the moon, and delved into forbidden texts in the library's darkest corners. Laura felt alive in a way she never had before, yet a part of her wondered if she was dancing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between danger and delight. Little did Laura know that their clandestine encounters would soon be interrupted by a revelation that would shake the very foundations of her world. A revelation that would force her to confront the true nature of Carmilla's mysteries and the darkness that lurked within. Growing suspicions. As the night drew in, Laura sat by the fireplace, her mind still reeling from the strange events that had been unfolding since Carmilla's arrival. The mysterious woman who had visited her as a child, Carmilla's unsettling behavior, and the eerie atmosphere of Karnstein Castle all swirled together in her thoughts. Her father's growing suspicions only added to her unease. Laura's father paced the room, his brow furrowed as he glanced out the window towards the shadowy outline of Karnstein Castle. "Carmilla," he muttered under his breath. "There's something unsettling about her." Laura looked up from her book, her curiosity piqued. "Father, you've been acting strange ever since Carmilla arrived. Is something wrong?" His expression softened as he turned to face her. "My dear, it's just..." Her answers are always so vague. "And this sudden illness in the village, it's all too coincidental." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "You've been experiencing that chest pain again, haven't you? Ever since Carmilla arrived?" Laura nodded, remembering the dull ache that had been plaguing her. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was connected to Carmilla's presence. Just then, Carmilla entered the room, her eyes darting between Laura and her father. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of concern. Laura's father cleared his throat. "Carmilla, we need to talk about your mother. It's time you wrote to her." Carmilla's face paled slightly. I will, but it's complicated. My family is very ancient and noble, but I'm not at liberty to disclose our name or estate." "And what of the castle?" he pressed. "You've never explained your connection to Karnstein." Carmilla hesitated, then spoke softly. "It's a place of many memories, some best left undisturbed. But I assure you, my home lies in the direction of the west, in a country much more remote than you might imagine." Laura watched the exchange, a sense of unease growing within her. She couldn't shake the feeling that Carmilla's secrets were more than just innocent mysteries. As the night drew closer, Laura's father said, "We must find out more about this castle and your past, Carmilla. It's time for the truth." Carmilla nodded, her eyes reflecting a hint of sadness. "For now, let us enjoy the peace of the night." As she left the room, Laura's thoughts lingered on Carmilla's enigmatic words, her mind racing with questions and doubts. She couldn't help but wonder what secrets lay hidden behind Carmilla's mysterious smile, and what darkness lurked in the shadows of Karnstein Castle. An unusual bond. Laura walked alongside Carmilla through the lush gardens of the castle, moving under the shade of ancient trees. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the sun cast a warm glow over the landscape, creating a serene atmosphere that seemed to deepen their connection. "You know, Carmilla," Laura began, "ever since you arrived, I've felt as if I've known you for ages. It's strange, isn't it?" Carmilla turned to her with a gentle smile, her eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. "Perhaps our souls were acquainted long before we met in this life," she replied, her voice soft yet carrying an underlying intensity. Laura pondered Carmilla's words, feeling the weight of their shared childhood vision. It was a bond that felt both beautiful and bewildering. "I remember dreaming of you when I was just a little girl. You were there just as you are now, and it felt so real." As they continued their walk, Carmilla's hand brushed against Laura's, sending a shiver up her spine. "I had the same dreams, Laura. It's as if fate has intertwined our paths." The distant sound of the castle's bell signaled the evening hour. Laura glanced back at the towering structure, remembering her father's cautious words and the doctor's serious discussions that seemed to revolve around Carmilla's mysterious presence. "Carmilla," Laura said, her voice laced with hesitation. "There are things about you that I don't understand. Your reluctance to speak of your past, your avoidance of the chapel." Carmilla's expression darkened for a moment before she regained her composure. "There are parts of my life that are complicated. Vows I've made that prevent me from sharing everything with you. But know this, Laura, my affection for you is genuine." Laura wanted to believe her, to dismiss the nagging doubts that surfaced in her mind. Yet as they returned to the castle, the sight of Madame and Mademoiselle de La Fontaine waiting for them with worried looks only served to heighten her concerns. That night, as Laura lay in her bed, the moonlight streaming through her window, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Carmilla than met the eye. Her thoughts were a tangle of affection and suspicion, a reflection of the unusual bond that had formed between them, one that was both enchanting and enigmatic. An intrusive arrival. An intrusive arrival. The sound of lively music and merry discord filled the castle courtyard as a mountebank arrived, showcasing his various talents and offerings. He presented himself as a showman, playing airs on his fiddle, singing and performing comical dances. As he finished his show, the mountebank began to display his wares, claiming to have charms and amulets that could protect against the upire rumored to be preying in the woods. He held up oblong slips of vellum with cabalistic ciphers and diagrams, assuring the crowd that these charms would keep them safe if pinned to their pillows. Carmilla, who had been watching with interest, approached the mountebank and purchased one of the amulets. Laura's father, intrigued by the performance, also bought one for Laura. As they walked away, Carmilla turned to Laura and smiled mischievously. "I'll give you mine, Laura," she said, holding out the amulet. "You can wear it tonight." Laura hesitated, but took the amulet and pinned it to her pillow that night. The next morning, Laura's father summoned the doctor to discuss her recent health issues. The doctor arrived looking grave, and after examining Laura, he requested a private conversation with her father. "I need to speak with you about Laura's condition," he said seriously. She described a sensation like 2 needles piercing her skin near her neck. "Have you noticed anything unusual?" Laura's father looked worried but nodded solemnly. "Yes, I have seen her wince in pain several times." "What does it mean?" The doctor's expression grew even more serious. "I'm not sure yet, but I think we should investigate further. May I take some time to examine her again?" Laura's father agreed, and the doctor went to examine Laura, leaving her feeling uneasy and concerned. Later that day, General Spielsdorf arrived at the castle, responding to a delayed letter from Laura's father. His presence added to the sense of unease that had settled over the castle. As the sun began to set, Carmilla sought out Laura. "Let's take a walk in the garden," she suggested. "The moon is full tonight." Laura agreed, feeling drawn to Carmilla despite the strange occurrences. They strolled through the garden, Carmilla's laughter and chatter filling the air. The moon cast an eerie glow over the castle, making the shadows seem to move and twist around them. Carmilla began to tell Laura stories of her childhood, of playing in the woods and exploring the secrets of the forest. Her eyes sparkled with a mischievous light, and Laura found herself drawn into the tale, feeling as though she was right there with Carmilla, exploring the mysteries of the forest. She tried to push aside the feeling that something about Carmilla's stories seemed off, focusing instead on the thrill of adventure that Carmilla's tales inspired. Laura felt a sense of relief wash over her. She was glad to be back in the safety of her own home, away from the strange and unsettling feelings that had begun to creep over her in the garden. But Carmilla's eyes glinted with a dark and sinister light, something that seemed to lurk just beneath the surface. The General's obsession. The General's obsession. The General paced the room, his boots thudding against the wooden floor. Laura watched him, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Uncle," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "why do you look at Carmilla with such disdain?" The General stopped and turned, his eyes not just aflame with anger, but with a knowing dread. "Laura, my child," he said, his voice a mix of sorrow and resolve, "Carmilla harbors a darkness that is not of this world." Laura's father, who had been silent by the fireplace, stepped forward. "What have you seen, General?" he asked, his voice a steady force against the growing unease. The General walked over to the window, gazing out into the darkening sky. "I have seen the creature that lurks in her shadow, a specter that has haunted our family for generations. It was this very demon that took my niece, and I have seen it with my own eyes, transformed from Carmilla's form into that of a beast." Laura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "A beast?" she echoed, her disbelief giving way to a dawning horror. The General nodded, his face a mask of grim certainty. "Yes, and it is time we put an end to this curse. I have gathered evidence, irrefutable proof of her true nature, and soon we shall confront her." Laura's father's eyes now mirrored the resolve in the General's. "Then we must act swiftly," he declared. "We shall gather the villagers, arm ourselves with knowledge and strength, and face this malevolent force as one. Carmilla will be confronted, and the truth shall be revealed for the safety of our family and the entire village." The General nodded, a strategic glint in his eye. "At dawn we move," he proclaimed, setting into motion the events that would lead to an epic confrontation between the darkness of the past and the hope of a new day. Ignorance and danger. Laura lay in her bed, the moon casting a pale glow through the window, painting shadows across her room. She turned restlessly, the image of Carmilla's face haunting her dreams. "Why do you look so sad, Laura?" Carmilla's voice was soft, almost a whisper, as she appeared beside Laura's bed, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I don't know," Laura murmured, caught between sleep and wakefulness. "There's a heaviness in my heart that I can't explain." Carmilla smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. "It's just the night playing tricks on you. Come, let's walk in the garden. The night air will clear your mind." Laura hesitated, but the allure of Carmilla's presence was too strong. They walked side by side in silence, the night blooming with the scent of roses. "Of an owl." "You never speak of your home, Carmilla," Laura ventured, breaking the silence. Carmilla's hand tightened around Laura's. "Some things are better left unsaid, dear Laura. The past is a shadow, and I live in the light of the present with you." "But the General speaks of dangers," Laura pressed on, her curiosity piqued by Carmilla's evasion. Carmilla's voice took on a hint of irritation. "He's blinded by his grief and fears. Trust me, Laura, I mean you no harm. You are dear to me, and I would never let anything hurt you." As they strolled back to the castle, the darkness seemed less oppressive to Laura. Her doubts dissipated under Carmilla's soothing words. The shadows that had loomed so large in her mind receded, replaced by a sense of comfort in Carmilla's presence. The next morning, Laura woke feeling restless, her mind replaying the conversation with Carmilla like a refrain. She couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something hidden beneath Carmilla's words, something she wasn't telling her. As she went about her daily routine, Laura found herself lost in thought, her mind wandering back to Carmilla again and again. Every time she tried to confront her doubts, Carmilla's charming smile and gentle touch pushed them aside. Days passed, and Laura grew more and more entwined with Carmilla. Her father seemed hesitant to intervene, and even the general's warnings fell on deaf ears. Carmilla's influence spread subtly throughout the castle, seeping into every corner of the castle, casting a spell of unease that was almost palpable. The atmosphere grew heavier, the shadows deepening as if they too were alive. Laura remained trapped in her web of deceit, unaware of the horror that awaited her. The general watched with growing concern as Carmilla's hold on Laura tightened. He knew the danger that lurked beneath Carmilla's charming facade, but his warnings fell on deaf ears. Even Laura's father seemed hesitant to intervene, entranced by Carmilla's beauty and charm. As the days turned into weeks, the castle became a place of dark magic and foreboding. The servants whispered among themselves, sensing the evil that lurked in the shadows. But Laura remained oblivious, caught in Carmilla's snare of deceit and manipulation. The shocking truth. The general stood before Laura and her father, his face a mask of worry and determination. "Carmilla," he said gravely, "is not who she seems." Laura's father nodded, his expression grave, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. The general continued, "I have encountered such creatures before, and I assure you, she is one of them." Laura's heart raced as she processed the implications. The general's words confirmed her darkest suspicions. She recalled the strange dreams, the figure at her bed, and the unexplained fear that had haunted her nights. "We must protect Laura," her father declared firmly. The general agreed, outlining a strategy to safeguard her from the danger that lurked so close. As Laura lay in her bed, the night around her was still, filled with the weight of the impending confrontation. She knew that with the dawn she would face the reality of Carmilla's deception, and the truth would be revealed. She couldn't shake off the feeling of unease, her mind racing with questions. What did Carmilla want from her? Why had she been so kind and affectionate, only to deceive them all? The memories of their laughter, their walks in the forest, and their whispered secrets now seemed tainted with an air of deceit. Laura's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside her room, a reminder that the night was far from over. The final confrontation. The final confrontation. The Styrian castle loomed ominously against the night sky as Laura's father, with a heavy heart, led a group of men through the winding corridors. Their torches flickered, casting long shadows on the stone walls, as they approached the concealed tomb of Countess Millarca. Laura, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and sorrow, followed close behind. She could not shake the image of Carmilla, both the gentle girl she had befriended and the monstrous fiend she had witnessed in the church. It was a duality that haunted her every thought. As they reached the tomb, the general, a stern look etched on his face, directed the men to open the ancient crypt. "We must end this curse," he declared, his voice echoing through the silence. Laura's father hesitated, his hand trembling. "We do this not for revenge," he said softly, "but to save a soul from eternal torment." The tomb's lid was moved aside, revealing the ageless face of Countess Mircalla. Laura gasped, her memories of Carmilla clashing with the reality before her. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the chamber and the Countess's eyes snapped open. With a swift motion, her hand shot out, gripping the general's wrist with inhuman strength. He cried out in pain. Laura watched in horror as her father stepped forward and gently prized open Carmilla's fingers. "You are not of this world," he said, his voice steady. "But I will not let you suffer the horrors of vampirism. Come, my dear Countess, let us take you away from this place." Carmilla's eyes locked onto Laura's father, a mixture of confusion and pleading in their depths. For a moment, Laura saw a glimmer of the girl she had known, and her heart ached with sorrow. With a gentle touch, Laura's father guided Carmilla out of the tomb. As they emerged into the night air, Carmilla's form began to fade, her body dissolving into mist. It was then that Laura realized her father's clever ruse. Pretending to remove Carmilla's remains and obliterating her monument, had saved the vampire from a posthumous execution and a dreadful existence. By adopting this stratagem, Laura's father aimed to protect his once beloved Mircalla from the horror of such a fate. As they walked away from the castle, Laura glanced back. At the ruined church where she had witnessed Carmilla's terrifying transformation, she knew that she would never forget the lessons she had learned in that foreboding place of love, loss, and the dangers that lurked in the shadows. The general, his expression still stern, nodded curtly at Laura's father. "You have ended the terror," he said gruffly. "I will ensure that all records of this event are sealed to protect your family's reputation." Laura felt a sense of relief wash over her as they left the castle behind, the darkness of the crypt and the horrors it held slowly receding from her mind. She knew that she would always carry the memory of Carmilla with her, but it was no longer a burden of fear and dread. Instead, it was a reminder of the power of compassion and the importance of protecting those we love, even if they are not what they seem.